Is Usahon Ilobun. I'll be your instructor on this lab on AWS console. What we'll be looking at is the VPC endpoint, and the overview is in this lab you will learn how EC2 in a private EC2s in a private subnet use the AMI rule and VPC endpoint to access your S3 bucket. This is the architectural structure, and we have four major resources, which is the instance or the servers. Okay, we have the endpoint, we have our bucket, and we have the IAM rules. So these are the resources that we are going to deploy. It is straightforward, and after this we are going to connect and do a test using the line commands. So please work with me. It is simple and straightforward as long as you know the resources to deploy and how they connect with each other. So let's go straight down to the AWS console. So welcome to the console. The first I'll click on EC2. I'm going to create two instances. First I'll click on first. I'm going to create a public and a private instance. So I'll make it Linux pub. Straight down the AMI, the operating system, I'll use it as default, which is Amazon Linux. The instance type is the same, default. I'm going to either use the existing, or for the purpose of this training, I can create a new, which is a name of your choice. Okay, so that has been created and a notepad has been generated. So I'm going to open the notepad. We'll be needing it later on in this lab. So I go down to network, so I'm going to select. I'm going to use the default VPC. I'm going to select a subnet. I'm going to choose the first availability zone, which is A1. I'll enable this to make it public. I can create a new security group, or I can use an existing security group. So we'll be creating a new security group, and the name I can give it as Linux. So I'll move straight down to the inbound rows. Okay, this is by default SSH ports, so I'm going to add two more to our security group. I'm going to add the HTTP, customer source type anywhere. I'm going to include HTTPS. Anywhere. I'll go straight down. I'll click on launch. So I've launched my first instance. So this is the public. I'm going to create another, which will be the private. I'll put Linux, the same process, PR, which is private. The operating system remains the same. The instance type remains the same. I'm going to use the same keypel I created. Straight down, I'm going to the edit my network, the default. I'll be using the same availability zone, but this time I'm going to make it, I'm disabling the public, so making it private. So on the security group, I'm going to select the Linux security group I just created. I'll click on launch. So we have created two instances. So when I click on instance refresh, I'll be able to see the two, both the private and the public. And what differentiates them, when you click on this, you can see carefully that we have private IP and public, but the other, let's see, we only have the private. It's not public. The server is not public, it's running. So while we wait for this to the status to be passed, the instance is running. So we have 3 more resources, okay, to deploy. I'll have to come here, right click and duplicate this page. Let's look at the next resource, which is the S3 bucket. Search S3, click on S3. So I'll create a new bucket. I'll give it a bucket name. It does not accept cap logs, so I'm going to give it that is the name I'm giving it. You can give it a name of your choice. I'm going to allow public assets, and I'll click on acknowledge. Straight down, I'll click on create. So we have simply created the bucket. So the next, we are going to look at the IAM, which is identity and asset management. Now we are going to assign a role that we connect the EC2 to the S3. At this point, I'm going to create a new role. So the resource is AWS services. And I'm going to select the role should be connected to the EC2. And I'll click on next. So now the permission, the EC2 should have permission to the S3 bucket. So I'll type in S3 and grant it all access to the S3 bucket. I'll click on next. I'll give the row a name, so I can give the row VPC endpoint. That is what I'm giving my IAM row. Straight down, I click on create. So we have successfully created 3 out of the 4 resources. Pretty much simple. So at this point, I go back to my instance, and now to each of these that is still running, let me see what the status is. You can see the head check is 2 of 2, 2 of 2. To each of these instances, I'm going to include the IAM rules that I just created. I'll come, select, click on action, click on security, modify the IAM rule. I'll click on drop down, I'll select the rule I just created, update it. So I've successfully connected the IAM rule that grant access to the S3 to the private. Now let me connect same to the public. I'll go to action, go to security, modify rule, select. Now I've connected it together. So this is all done. The next thing we are going to focus on is our VPC. So I'm coming to the tab here. I click on VPC. We are going to look at the VPC endpoint. It's pretty much simple and direct. So I'll scroll down to where we have the endpoint. Click on the endpoint. Click on create endpoint. The type remains AWS services. So now we are going to search for the S3. Okay, so the gateway links to the S3 bucket. So we are going to look at the gateway here, the type to be gateway, which is this S3. I move straight down. I'll be selecting the network, okay, which is the VPC. which is the default I used. Now the routing table, this is the routing table. I have to select the routing table, and with this I'll click on create. So successfully we have created all the resources we need. It's showing us available. Everything has been joined together. At this point I can end the lab, but for the purpose of configuration and testing, we are going back to the instance. Everything has been coupled together, has been done successfully. So now the testing will be, we are going to connect the public server, and from the public we are going to access the S3 through the private. So this is connect. Select the public, connect. We'll click on connect. So this process is a bit of using the line commands, okay, on this interface for a test. I'm going to copy the commands and run the test, but explain what the commands are. So the first, this is the first command, and on this command we can see we have here the IP, the public IP. So we are trying to initialize the public IP on the line command. We can see it here, select. Underneath we have the public IP, and also we have the name of our key pair that was created. So with these two we are going to initialize, okay, the public server. So at this point, are you sure you want to continue connecting? We are connecting the public. Yes. Now we are going to copy another line command. So the next key, which is this, is to activate the private key on this line command. So I'm clicking on it. It's asking me to insert the private key. So I'm going to copy the notepad that was generated and I'll paste it here. So come to the notepad, the name I created on the instance was please. I'm going to copy all this. So I'll be putting it here as paste. At this point, I'll click on escape. I'll click on my double hyphen WQ. Click on enter. It has accepted my password, my private password or private key that was created. The next, I'm going to connect it to the private server. So with this line command, I'm going to grant permission to the private key that was created. So now I'm going to link the private to the public. So I'm going to take the script to connect the private server to this public interface. I'm going to edit this, okay, to the public, the private IP. So I'll come to the private. I get the private IP. I'm going to clear this off and replace it with this is the public IP. I'm also going to change this to the private key. At this point, I'll click on enter. I'll click on yes. Now it has switched me from the public to the private. The essence of this above scripting is for us to access the private through the public interface. The private will not connect directly to this line command, but for us to access the resource through the private, we need to go through the configuration to get to this point where we are, and then we'll run the test if we can access the S3 bucket using the private server. So I'm going to put this to prepare this script. And now let's try to access our buckets, our S3 buckets. I'm going to bring the scripts. So I'm going to edit this as well. I'm going to use the name on the S3 bucket. So I go back to my instance, go to the S3, click on the S3. So I'll select this. If I click on this, it will give me the bucket name directly. Let's see. Buckets. Okay. So this is the bucket name. I'll be picking this. I'll come down here to the line command. I'm going to change the bucket name. I'm going to look at the region where this AP Northeast 1. I would like to amend that as well. East 1, just to be very sure. Northeast 1. At this point, I'll click on enter. We can say with our private server, we can access the S3 bucket. So the lab is pretty much simple, very simple to configure. The test requires a lot of scripting, and the essence of the script is to give us an opportunity to connect the private to access the S3. So if we have to go back to the instance, okay, and try to connect the private directly, because it is a private server, it will not give us the interface for this test. So this is a private. I'll try to connect it directly. Take a careful look. We cannot connect it. So in order for the private to access the S3, we have to run through the line commands from the public, giving us access to the private. And with the private, we did a test and we were able to access the S3 bucket. Thank you so much for joining me in this session, and I will appreciate you joining me in other sessions. First thing, look at the resources that is required, create them individually, and in this individual creation, you can link them all together. Thanks for your time.